This evening, and we're going to be starting by singing Praise Him, Praise Him. Jesus, our blessed Redeemer, Lord, our sins, suffer and bread and life. You are all of the eternal salvation. Hail Him, Jesus, and merciful. Some give praise, Jesus, who bore our sorrows. Wonderful, deep and strong. Praise Him, praise Him, Jesus is praise Him, ever and joyful song. Praise Him, Jesus our blessed Redeemer. Heavenly, earth, louder than His will. Jesus, Savior, we live forever and ever. Crown Him, crown Him, prophet and priest and king. God is this morning, over the world victorious. Glory, glory, under the Lord in all. Praise Him, praise Him. Praise Him, ever and joyful song. Let's just open in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the wonderful messages you've given to us, for the challenges you've laid before us. And Father, we pray that you would help your word to just touch all of our hearts again this evening. Lord, we pray for those that are watching on the internet, and Lord, I pray that they would just be blessed, and that there would be more, and Father, that what is recorded could be watched in the future, and you just bless all of these messages and help us all to have an answer for the hope that lies within us. Thank you for this evening, and bless Dr. Guliuzza and Dr. Hawking as they present what you've laid in their hearts this evening. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. This time I'll call on Dr. Guliuzza.
Okay, y'all ready for round 3 on that? That's good. How many of you got a gist of everything we talked about this afternoon? Kind of have it down now, a little different way of looking at how organisms are functioning on that. How would you sum it up? This is by way of quick review. If you were to put it into one or two sentences. Anybody really bold enough to kind of just stick out there and say, well, evolution sees what? Evolution sees nature creates itself. Nature creates itself on that. And therefore, environments are actively what? Shaping, molding, and making organisms as it drives them through space and time via environmental or selective pressures. Does that make sense now? That's it. Nature creates itself, drives them through, and organisms are essentially passive, but the environment is really active. That's how it's typically viewed. But in reality, organisms are driving themselves through space and time, taking on environmental challenges, and when they solve those challenges, they fill those niches. Organisms are active, and environments just are. They're just conditions. They're just out there. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so there you go. Now you can summarize it. You have what's viewed and what is reality on those. Well, tonight, it's also practical. Everything is going to be aimed towards sharing this creation message with your friends. Sharing it with your friends. And so it's called 5 Minutes with a Darwinist, exposing the fluff of evolution. So when you see something in a title called FLUFF, that's an acronym. That's something that you can kind of remember. All of you can remember FLUFF, right? FLUFF, F.L.U.F.F, FLUFF. I use this all the time. I did a radio interview just last week, and someone interviewing me from East St. Louis, around the East St. Louis area. I used FLUFF during the radio interview, so I use this all the time. So you want to talk with your friends very quickly, because maybe you don't get a lot of time to talk with them, who believe in evolution. And so you want to show evolution is more air than substance, and that's why it's FLUFF. F, focus the discussion. That's what you want to do. L, less than persuaded, a phrase we want to work into our vocabulary. U, unobserved important events. Unobserved important events. F, failed mechanism for design. And then finally, F, freedom found in creation science. Some of you are really, really, really taking notes fast. I can see you're like writing really fast. And others are like, oh, I want to take a nap after dinner on those things. You know, from my perspective, I see everything from up here. You can't hide your face. And besides, I was a medical doctor. So when you come in, I kind of assess the patient in like 5 seconds. Are they sick or are they faking it? You know, and you look for all kinds of cues on people very, very rapidly. So you really can't hide anything from me, fakers. So if you don't want to write really fast, we have this booklet on the back table on that. 5 Minutes with a Darwinist, exposing the fluff of evolution. This, when I was in school, this was like a lifesaver, because what could I do? I could just sit back and listen, and then pay. How much is this booklet? $1, $2, $2, $2, and you could get this, or you could buy. I'll make an executive decision. 5 for $5. How's that? $2 for $5, and then spare your fingers and just kind of like kick back and listen on there. But don't fall asleep. All right, 5 Minutes with the Darwinist. F, we're going to just jump right into it. Focus the discussion. Focus because time is limited. So you need to immediately define some terms, and you want to use some really reputable sources. Some reputable sources there. So the very first thing you need to define is evolution. Now, evolution is a slippery term. This is going to take more than 5 minutes to explain this, but I'll explain why. because people want you to believe in evolution, so they will define it very broadly. So evolution just simply means change, or change over time. And therefore, evolution happens. And everybody knows it happens because everybody has seen things change over time. In fact, some of you probably woke up this morning and you will go to bed tonight and you look in the mirror and you'll say, oh my, have I changed over time? Or something like that. You're always changing over time, so everybody sees it. And if that's all it meant, there'd be no dispute. We'd all be evolutionists. But that isn't what it means. The National Association of Biology Teachers, a reputable source because it's the largest biological organization in the world, 12,000 members plus, they say the diversity of life on Earth is the outcome of evolution. Now that we would have a dispute over. That's more than just change. That's saying everything on Earth, birds and bees and plants and trees and all of that, is the result of evolution. That life is fundamentally continuous. That it's one big tree of life that's changing over time. So, that's what they say, and that's what we have a dispute on. So I might say, well, you know, in 1 second, when I'm talking about evolution, I'm not simply talking about change over time. I'm talking about a process which explains the diversity of life on Earth. Boom. And you have narrowed the discussion to the real crux of the issue, the point that we're really disputing over. And then, of course, I might add right after that, you know, some major changes. What's with our little clicker here? Extraordinary claims demand some extraordinary evidence. Therefore, if this really is going to explain it, I should expect to see evidence for that everywhere. And then the second term we need to define very, very quickly is science. Science. Well, the National Academy of Sciences, that's a reputable source, they wrote a book on science and creationism, and they say scientific investigators seek to understand natural phenomena by observation and experimentation. Isn't that what you guys learned in school? Science is based on what? Observation and testing. Science is based on observation and testing. Scientific interpretations of the facts and explanations that account for them must be testable by observation and experimentation. So, science is based on observation and testing, and I would just say this. I hold that science is based on that. Observation and testing, observation and experimentation, whatever you want to do. And in less than 30 seconds, you have really focused the discussion. Evolution is supposed to explain the diversity of life on Earth, and science is based on observation and testing. Okay. I know this is Fargo, and Dr. Hawking has been trying like crazy to get everybody to talk, hasn't he? He's even threatened that God's going to, what, zap you on the way home, you know, and zap, bang, on that. I bet you would really croak if some of you got zapped. But this is interactive time, so we need to have a quiz. A quiz. Quiz. So the poor gal over there, just the sad face is so sad when I said quiz. It's not really that bad. Quizzes. Were you a teacher? Did you ever do pop quizzes? No. No. That's it. Okay. Well, we're going to divide the room up into two. This side versus this side. This side versus this side. And my wife's over here. So you guys, by definition, get to be from this over. You guys get to be the smart side. Smart side. Smart side. You guys from over here, sorry. Just for tonight, you're the dumb side. Okay? Dumb side. Smart side, dumb side. Okay, smart side. Evolution is supposed to explain what?
Origins.
Okay, smart side. Smart side. Evolution is supposed to explain the
diversity
Of life.
That's right, diversity of life on Earth. There you go. Great, great. That was it. We dug it out of you. You're just holding back because you don't want to show off, no doubt. Okay, dumb side. Science is based on what? Did you hear that? Man, it's like they were reading it from the board or something like that. Science, this was like responsive reading, you know? Science is based on what? Did you hear that? Wow, it's like this. They're not speaking in tongues. So, that's it. Diversity of life on Earth, observation and testing. Okay. L, less than persuaded. Less than persuaded. This is a phrase we would like to work into our vocabulary. In order to help you remember this, I put a picture of a gal on the screen who appears to be less than persuaded. Does she look skeptical on that? I mean, look at that look. That's the less than persuaded look. You know what she's making that face to? Something a guy told her. Because women make that face when guys tell them stuff all the time. It's like, what? Are you trying to tell me? And then the genetically predisposed face appears, where the eyebrow goes up and I look like, are you crazy? Or do you think I'm that gullible? Comes up. Guys, have you ever seen this face before? Yeah, of course. We see it all the time. Gals don't even recognize when they're doing it, but that's how their face is frozen. Anyway, so they make this look. I don't know if I really believe what I'm being told. That's how we want to be. We're listening, but we're not really persuaded. You see, we're listening, but we're a little skeptical. We're the ones who are a little skeptical. We've been listening to what we've been told on television, and we don't really know if it's true. But one thing we don't want to do is jump into the conversation with this phrase, well, I just don't believe in evolution. That is a real conversation stopper. That stops it right then, because they're going to say, well, I don't believe in creation. Boom, impasse, and it's over. It's over, because nobody believes in those things. But if you say that I'm less than persuaded, it implies that you have been listening carefully to your teachers. You've been listening carefully to National Geographic. You've been listening carefully to NOVA and everything they've been telling you about evolution. And it means that because you're listening carefully, you're willing to be convinced if they can persuade you. And if you're listening carefully, and if you're open, then maybe the person that you're talking to will not immediately become defensive. So when you say, well, I have been listening carefully, but I'm less than persuaded that the evidence can explain the diversity of life on Earth. And besides, when you begin the conversation with the word believe, we know what belief means. We know what biblical belief means and those kinds of things. But a lot of people hear the word believe and they think of something that's like a fairy tale. You believe in Santa Claus. You believe in the Tooth Fairy. You believe in something like that. And so belief has this idea of maybe related to fiction and not necessarily fact. So if evolution is supposed to explain the diversity of life on Earth or the outcome of life on Earth, whatever those things are, you're less than persuaded because the principal evidence that you've been given is a lot of huge diversity from one type of creature to another. You see a lot of pictures of a lot of diverse dogs. But what you really want to know is, where did the dogs come from? Not how did you get big varieties of dogs. Where did dogs come from? Less than persuaded because you've all seen those changing finch beak lengths on that. Well, you get big beaks, small beaks, fat beaks, all those other kinds of things. But where did the finch come from? That's what we want to know. How do we get finches? How did we get the cells to make finch beaks as well? Where'd that stuff come from? That's what you need to explain. Peppered moths, dark colored moths, light colored moths, variations on trees and all that kind of stuff. Is that happening by natural selection? No. And you guys are like, no way, I'm not that gullible. I'm not going to step into that. Obviously, moths that make a dark color, they fit in dark niches. They move into the niche. And light-colored moths do the same thing. But nevertheless, evolution certainly doesn't explain where the moths came from. That's what we want to know. What about similarities in body parts? You know, if you take my arm, you take a dog's arm, there's one bone in the upper arm, two bones in the lower arm, kind of similar bones in the wrist, fingers, hands, those kinds of things. You get similar bones. I mean, doesn't that prove we had a common ancestor? That we had similar bones on that? Well, maybe, but maybe similarities are due to other explanations. Maybe there's buttons on this clicker. There's buttons on all kinds of stuff. Just because they have buttons, does that mean they have a common ancestor? Or maybe buttons are on here because there's a common design for buttons. Maybe it's common design that explains similar bones. Besides, where did you get the information to make bones? That's no trivial accomplishment to make a bone. I mean, there's more information to make a bone than the tallest skyscraper in Fargo. I don't know. Maybe that was not a monumental feat, but anyway, maybe stack 4 buildings together in Fargo. There's a lot of information to make a bone. Resistance of bacteria to antibiotics. Oh, they become resistant due to what? Natural selection. But now you guys are not gullible for that. You would explain it like this. Oh, here's a population of bacteria. Antibiotics come into my environment. Some of those bacteria have the traits to solve the problem of the antibiotic. And when they do what? They fill the niche. Fill the niche. You successfully fill it. Nothing selects for them. But besides, we like to know where bacteria came from. I'm less than persuaded because it's supposed to explain the diversity of life on Earth, and all of these principal evidences never explain the diversity of life on Earth. So I'm less than persuaded because this is not really good evidence. I'm also less than persuaded, we're not just the ones who are skeptical. All the creatures are a little skeptical of this. Who wants to be related to humans? Anyway, that because evolution relies on lots of stories. Lots of stories. Speculation. Oh, baby. Special effects. Computer graphics. They're really good these days. You can see a wolf-like creature walk into the water and it morphs into a whale before your very eyes due to some computer-generated graphics. And wow, that looks pretty believable because they'll show it like losing its limbs and doing this and growing, flippers and stuff like that. Little kids, hey, that's probably how it happened. Well, that's really not real good evidence. And I've heard it in the classroom, I see it on television. I'm less than persuaded because I'm looking for real evidence to explain the diversity of life on Earth based on observation and testing. That's what I'm looking for, those kinds of things. I'm less than persuaded because evolution doesn't meet my criteria of science. Wow, now that is a skeptical little kid. Newborn. I mean, that's a newborn picture on there, and just like a few hours old. And how would you like to raise that for the next 20 years? I mean, that's something else. Because it's supposed to be based on observation and testing, and it isn't. All right, quiz time. Quiz time. All right, don't hold back this time, smart side. It says let her rip. Okay. Evolution is supposed to explain what?
Diversity of life on Earth.
I'm going to have to drink. The diversity of life on Earth. That's right. Did you hear that Canadian come through with the answer? There you go. That's it. You can see the state of American education. And these people can't blame it on Obama. Okay. Science is based on what?
Observation and testing.
Cool. Really good. Okay, smart side. We want to work out of our vocabulary what phrase. We want to get it out. Believe, okay, believe. Well, yeah, I believe.
I don't believe in evolution.
I just don't believe in evolution. Yeah, that's it. I just don't believe in evolution. Dumb side, what phrase do we want to work in? I am less than persuaded. Less than persuaded. On that, perfect. We've been listening, but we're less than persuaded. That's a great phrase, by the way. I use it with my wife all the time. She says, why? I'm kind of less than persuaded, hon. But anyway, so it's a good diffuser of things. I'm less than persuaded because of some unobserved important events. Unobserved important events. And the good thing is, we only have to really know two, which makes it easy for quizzing. Really quizzing. That's it. First, an unobserved natural origin of life. If evolution is true, and nature can create itself, and naturalism is true, you have to get life going. Now the key word here is natural. Natural. That means no intervention from God. No intervention. It has to just happen through natural processes. Wind, rain, gravity, sunlight, lightning, all those things. Bringing chemicals together and animating them in some way. You have to have a natural origin of life. The problem is, as we discussed yesterday, no one has seen it happen, and nobody is even close to duplicating it. None, not at all. And we mentioned this in yesterday's talk on 4 biological facts that the Bible got right. The very first one was, what is the origin of life? Life only comes from life. We talked about that. Well, so since I already elaborated on that, and I know you wouldn't forget it, that we can mention why is it so hard to explain the natural origin of life? I'll throw this in. It'll take me 60 seconds because living things. I told you that nobody knows exactly what life is, but living things do certain things, and they do at least 4. They grow. Living things grow. 2, they metabolize. That means they're able to extract energy from their environment. They're able to extract something from the environment. You notice I didn't say the environment sticks it in them. They what? They extract it and they convert that something into energy. That's called metabolism. They metabolize it. They're able to reproduce and they're able to adapt. A better word for adapt, or 2 words, are self-adjust. That kind of gets away from this evolutionary confusion over the word adaptation. Organisms can adjust. They can adjust themselves. So, in order to get those things going, you're caught in another chicken and egg scenario, because in order to reproduce, you have to have energy. That means you have to be able to metabolize. In order to adapt, you have to have energy. So which one of these, in order to reproduce, you have to have DNA or RNA? Which one of these came first? All. Yeah, they all came at the same time. Who said that? Yeah, you're right. They all came at the same time. But from an evolutionary standpoint, if they're going to explain it naturally, that would be almost a miracle for all of them to come at the same time. Because every one of those processes themselves is very, very complex. Metabolism, getting something into energy is a very complex process. Reproduction, very complex. Adaptation, complex. Growth, you go from growth and development, a single cell to trillions of cells. And they all take on their exact form in the right place at the right time and the right amounts. Wow. They're all very, very complex things to explain in and of themselves. And now you have to get 4 of them going. You see what I'm saying? So even very, very smart people on this planet are struggling with trying to come up with a scenario that can actually explain all of these things happening. It's very, very hard. It's a very difficult process to do. Nobody, as it says there, can adequately explain it. Therefore, Scientific American reported in 2011 this article, blow up the headline. Psst, don't tell the creationists, but scientists don't have a clue of how life began. And he's reporting on a convention of all origins of life researchers. They've come together, and nobody can figure out how to get it going, because I already explained to you why it is. It's very difficult. And his sentence, look at the first sentence. Exactly 20 years ago, I wrote an article for Scientific American that in draft form had the same headline. 20 years ago. And his editor squashed it because they're really open. Wow. You know what I predict 20 years from now? You'll have the exact same headline. And besides, if science is the open, unbiased search for truth, why wouldn't you want to tell the creationists? Why would this something be that you want to tell us? Well, we know that this is clearly a prerequisite for evolution. You've got to get life going. But they don't have a clue. And that's a fruitless effort because I can look at papers and read them too. On this. All right, next. An unobserved mechanism with the ability to transform. Here are the key words. Transform. Okay, smart side. This is the harder of the two, so it's coming your way. The hard transform one creature into a fundamentally different kind of creature. Not just different, a fundamentally different kind of creature. Like, what am I thinking now? Flies and mosquitoes. Fundamentally different. Not just different types of flies or different types of mosquitoes. Fundamentally different creature. Fundamentally different creature. Why is this important? Because if evolution is true, you have to get life going and you have to change it from one type to another. I mean, it's not any more basic than that. Those two things have to happen. And nobody has observed this to happen. As it says, even bacteria, supposedly simple, but they're not. Nobody's even seen one of them change from one type to another. Like a staph, you've heard of a staph infection, to a strep infection. Strep stays strep, staph stays staph. They all stay the same. You get different kinds of strep, you get different kinds of staph, but you don't even see bacteria change from one kind to another kind. That's really, really pretty stable. And bacteria haven't seemed to change, which were the first types of life on Earth, in billions of years. There's fossils of bacteria, and you can pick out what type they are from the fossils. Oh, that's pretty stable. We're looking for fundamentally different kinds of creatures, not just wildly different, like these two dogs are different. I mean, how many of you feel sorry for that little dachshund right there? You know, this is like the nerd of high school, and this is like the football player. I mean, it's just there. They're just like, they drool and everything all over you on stuff. But somehow they get dates. Anyway, they're there. We're looking for those kind. Here's a paper, which I don't know how they got this headline. It was produced in 2009 on the 200th anniversary of Charles Darwin's birthday. Evolution in Action. A 50,000 generation salute to Charles Darwin. Wow, I don't know how they got this to be a salute to Charles Darwin. What this paper is reporting on is the world's longest running experiment on evolution. It's been going on for over 35 years at University of Michigan by a man named Richard Lunsky. And every day they're growing a bacteria called E. coli. And you know what that is. It lives in your gut. E. coli, Escherichia coli. They take 90% of them out of their culture, destroy them, take the remaining 10%, grow them for another day. The next day, take 90% out, destroy them, take the remaining percent, and grow them for another day. And they're doing this every single day for 35 years. They don't destroy every one of them. They save some so they can compare DNA over time. And by 2009, they're up to 50,000 generations. Now they're up to 60,000 generations. I saw a paper on that just recently. 60,000 generations of E. coli. And this is a salute to Charles Darwin. Why? The E. coli are still what? E. coli. They're still E. coli. I mean, that doesn't explain the diversity of life on Earth. And if this experiment goes for another 35 years, or it goes, if Dr. Hawking was here, there he is, if it goes until the Lord returns, John, if it goes until these prophetic things happen, I can make one of two predictions. There's still going to be E. coli, or they will have gone extinct through mutational meltdown due to getting too many inbred mutations within the population of these, and they'll just die. But it's not going to be, it's not going to show the diversity of life on Earth by any means on that. Okay, and that means it's quiz time. Quiz time. Quiz time. Hey, would you guys like me to start with them first? Okay. Science is based on what? Wow, we threw you a curve there. It's like you had to kind of warm up on that. Science is based on observation and testing. Observation and testing. And evolution is supposed to explain what? Diversity of life on Earth. Diversity of life on Earth. Okay. What phrase do we want to work out of our vocabulary? I just don't believe in evolution. And what phrase do we want to work in? You guys feeling like I've left you out now, aren't you? It's like, wow, there won't be any questions left on there. Great job. Okay. You're less than persuaded because of two very important unobserved events. The first one is an unobserved natural origin of life. Natural origin of life. Unobserved natural origin of life. You've got to get life going. And then number two, you have to change it fundamentally. That's right. From one thing to a fundamentally different kind. That's right. Cool. On that. You're probably the type that would copy from her papers. You know? That was it. I could see it. Because as she's writing this, your eyes are flicking to her. On there. Well, that's okay. I didn't really copy, but I have to tell you, for most of my grade school life, a lot of my papers got blown away in the Wyoming wind, and I never brought them home. So I can totally identify with you. I would get these papers that had these grades that I didn't want my folks to see, and somehow when I stepped off the school bus, whoosh, they were all gone. And on that was it. So I can commiserate with those things there. But my wife, on the other hand, was just the exact opposite. We found report cards from her going all the way back to kindergarten, and they were all A's, 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 A's. June is a model student. I wish I had more students like June. You know, that's what they used to be able to say when they could compare kids and they didn't worry about self-esteem. You know, all of those kinds of things. And then a few years ago, my mom, I don't know how she had them, she hauled my report cards out and she gave them to my wife. And I was like, I don't even remember those. And they were like, Randy gets in fights. I mean, it was just terrible. I can't believe she ever fell for me. All right. F, failed mechanism for design. We can blitz through this one really, really quickly. Because everybody sees the design. Everybody sees complex design. And there's two explanations for it. Creationists say it looks designed because it is designed. That is the simplest and most straightforward explanation. The clicker looks designed because it is designed. Living things look designed because they are designed. Evolutionists say, no, the design only looks that way, but really isn't. It appears like it's designed, but it really wasn't, because there wasn't a real designer behind it. Therefore, they say it is only apparent design or an illusion of design. Now, it takes a lot of faith to believe that, but it only is an illusion of design. And whoa, there's their mechanism. There's mechanism of how evolution happens. Mutations coupled to their mechanism of natural selection. The problem is this doesn't really explain it. And you can push back against this like nobody else in the creationist camp, because you just had a monster lecture on this right here. The one thing we didn't really talk about was mutations. the totally random type that they're after. The key thing that you can remember on this is, and everybody knows it, is that mutations destroy information. In other words, they cause disease, and they cause cancer, and they cause death. So it's kind of hard to believe that this thing that happens in nature, mutations, which we know causes diseases and the like, is actually going to be the mechanism for building up life. Building up life. How many of you want mutations? You don't want mutations. You don't want mutations. Your doctors don't want mutations. Your dentist doesn't want mutations. You go into the dental office, and they're going to x-ray your teeth. And I put the little thing. Before they x-ray your teeth, what does the dental technician do? She comes out with what in her hands? Or his hands. Mostly it's a her. A lead apron. A lead apron. And they do what? They drop it on your lap. Plop. Right on your lap. Right there. Why do they do that? Because they don't want to irradiate your gonads with some radiation. Zap them, because they could cause mutations. Nobody wants their gonads radiated. And so nobody is looking for any kind of mutations. What's so funny? You just think like, here, radiate. I want to contribute to the evolution of life. You're wondering how I said that with such a straight face. And I'm wondering, boy, these people in Fargo, they're tough. Dr. Hawkins, this is a tough crowd. Not only is God going to zap them, He's going to radiate there on that. That's it. All on the way home. The whole future of North Dakota is at risk here. This is a bad thing. Nobody wants mutations. You don't want them. You don't want your kids to be a mutant. Any of those things. And then natural selection. Natural selection. We all know the whole lecture on this, and so you can boil it down to one thing. When they say natural selection does this, well, you say, well, show me the selector. And since we already heard the lecture that nature can't really select, there is no selector. And they're going to say, well, you know, it's just a metaphor, just a figure of speech. It's not really a selector. I'm just saying, well, you say, well, then figures of speech can't design. Figures of speech can't design. So this kind of pushes back against it very, very quickly. But we offer a better explanation. A better explanation, not by just saying that, you know, this looks designed, therefore it is design. We actually know that there are patterns of design. There are some patterns of design. You know the patterns too. You just haven't had a lot of practice explaining them to anybody else. So imagine, you go to your car, you turn it on, and you get out of the car and you open the hood. How many of you have ever done that? You've seen an engine running. Everybody has seen an engine running. Does the engine look designed? Yes. What are you seeing? What are you seeing when you look in there and you see it running? Everybody who even maybe hasn't ever worked on an engine before, you see some things. Do you see, I'll get you going, multiple parts working together for a purpose? Yes, you do. Yeah. That is the explanation. That's the definition of biological complexity. That's specified complexity in layman's language. Multiple parts working together for a purpose. Do you see precise timing? Do you see a specific, if you were to put it together, would that engine have to be put together in a specific order? Yes. Would there be precise fit and finish? Fit and finish. What do cylinder walls have to be? Rough or smooth? Smooth. What do the rings have to be? Smooth. Precise fit and finish. Does this hand have multiple parts working together for a purpose? Does it have timing? Is there specific fit and finish between the joints of these things? Yes, yes, yes. And when we see multiple parts working together for a purpose, precise timing, order of building it, fit and finish, We know from all of human experience that that is always 100% of the time caused by intelligence. Therefore, when I see him in living things and I have the exact same patterns, why would I not believe that that was caused by intelligence? Next, we see that they're so complex that the probability of them happening is exceedingly unlikely. What do I mean by that? Well, there's a lot of parts working together in this. A lot of parts. Just try to get nature all by itself to build 2 parks. When was the last time you saw wind, rain, lightning, thunder, all these natural processes put any parts together? Not to mention dozens and dozens of parts. And the more parts you put together, the probability of getting them to come together right goes down, 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 down. So it essentially becomes 0. And then finally we see lots of things with all or nothing unity, meaning unless all of the parts are there at the right time, in the right amount, in the right place, nothing is going to work right. And someone will say, well, give me an example of that. Well, here's a good one. Reproduction. Reproduction. What's good about reproduction is you don't have to really explain a lot to people because they already have, even though they may not be into biology, they all understand reproduction. And everybody understands how all the parts must work together. Not only on the gross anatomy level, but at the microanatomy level. All the parts must work together. And if they don't work together, you don't get offspring. And if you don't get offspring, you don't get a second chance to make it right. So evolution comes to a halt. So the best one to really bring the discussion to an end very, very quickly is reproduction. Because you could kind of make up a story about an eye, or you could make up a story about a hand. But it's hard to make up stories about reproduction because it has to work right from the very beginning. And it's very, very complex. So we have a better explanation. So I might say to my evolutionary friend that when I put the 2 mechanisms together, evolution versus creation, in a head-to-head test, I'm persuaded that when I see the patterns of design, the very, very low probability of them happening by chance, with all or nothing unity, that explains the design much better. And this was just kind of a gratuitous way for me as a parent to stick a picture of my kid in and brag about him on this. This is my son, number 30, right here. And this was our cross-team rival. And this is the goal line. And that's him just dropping that guy like a sack, boom, right on the field. On that, it was a blistering hit. You could hear it for miles. And it was just amazing that he did that. And this picture was on the front page of the newspaper on that he did that. So that's head-to-head competition on that. Too bad he suffers from concussion brain injury. But anyway, but it was a great hit. Anyway. And then finally, the freedom found in creation science. Freedom. Freedom like what? This kind of freedom. Now that is really pretty free. Free. Free like this. Let me detail a few positive aspects of creation, such as the freedom to follow the evidence wherever it leads and never stop questioning and discovering. You know, the evolutionists like to think that they're the ones who are free, that they're the real skeptics, but we're the ones who are really skeptical of evolution. We're less than persuaded by that. And we're the ones who really follow the evidence wherever it leads. I am not worried for any moment that anything in evolution is going to topple the whole idea of design. But evolutionists aren't that way. This was debated back in the 1990s in Kansas, and Scott Todd, writing in Nature, said, even if all the data point to an intelligent designer, such a hypothesis is excluded from science because it is not naturalistic. Stop right there. That's all you have to read. How much of the data? All the data. Now tell me, what scientist really functions like that? What engineer would function like that? You know, all the data points to the fact that this beam's going to fail. But I'm going to put it in anyway. You know, nobody functions like that. You know, You come to me, I'm your medical doctor. All your tests, all your lab work, all your signs, all your symptoms, all the films point to you that you got disease X, but I think you got Y. Nobody does that except in this evolutionary world, where they can exclude all the data because it doesn't point to a designer. A few states down from here in Iowa State University, there was an astronomer named Guillermo Gonzalez. He believed the universe showed signs of design. He believed it was even really old, billions of years old, but he thought it looked like it was designed. And because of that, he was denied tenure because of his belief in design. The Guardian wrote this, saying whether in 4004 BC, that's pretty much my position, or 13 billion years ago God made it, is not falsifiable and therefore not science. I know that, were I in a position to offer Guillermo Gonzalez tenure, I would deny it for the precise reason that is, yes, religious views about purpose in the universe explicitly means that he is a due scientist regardless of his ability to generate valid data. Is that following the evidence wherever it leads? No, I want that freedom to follow the evidence wherever it leads and not be constrained by a worldview that says I can't. Next, I like the freedom from magic words. Here's a few you can kind of memorize. Every one of these magical words I took from the scientific literature. Lots of papers, Nature, Science, and they pour from those magazines like water over Niagara Falls. Words like arose, emerged, appeared, gave rise to, and on and on and on. When they say something evolved or it arose, that is not a scientific explanation of how it happened. That is a magical word which is skipping over lots and lots of missing data to tell you how it happened. So we should be able to recognize them. Our kids should be able to recognize them. And one time I was going to have the idea, when I was a kid, there was a thing called a clicker or a cricket. It had a piece of bent metal, and you could bend it and it made a noise, like click, 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 click on that. I'd love to get those out, print on the back of it these magical words, and then ICR.org on the bottom of it. Give these out free to parents and have them give them to their kids and have them listen to National Geographic or listen to Nova, listen to some of these evolutionary stories. And every time they hear one of these words that's on their clicker, they push it, click, click, click. And you could have a contest between smart kids and dumb kids. And they could go clicking away on that. And that would force them to listen very carefully to the show because it would be a fun contest. Or maybe you could give them a stamper and they could stamp their textbooks with these magic words. And the school board would say, no charge for defacing your book if you just stamp magic words. Wow, that would really change. None of us really like these magic words. Look at this one, burst onto the scene. That's a winner on that. Here, I'm your medical doctor. Here's some medicine. I'd like you to take it. It burst onto the scene this morning. Nobody does this. Wow. Here's an example. Stuart Kaufman says, where's my timer girl? Are we good? 8 minutes, thank you. Man, she didn't even, 8 minutes. It wasn't even like about 8 minutes. It was 8 minutes. That's a classic. And that, you're so much like my wife. I can't imagine. When I say those things, she gives me the exact as well. I would have said roughly 8 minutes or so, but you can have Dr. Hawking's time. So, 4 billion years ago, some conjury of molecules dance blindly catalyzing one another's formation, reaching a critical diversity in which self-sustaining webs of reactions emerged and formed life. Blind interactions gave rise to the emergent phenomenon of cellular life. Cells linked in metabolic exchanges, blindly creating the first ecosystems. Those ecosystems have unfolded over billions of years with a profusion of species emerging and passing into extinction. And at each level, we sense emergent lawfulness in the profusion. Full of magic words? You bet.
Oh, yeah.
Full of meaning? Not really. Freedom to follow from the self-delusion that all design is just an illusion. Look at this. Richard Dawkins says, biology is the study of complicated things that have the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. And he wrote that in a book called The Blind Watchmaker. Only looks like that. And then years later he published The God Delusion. But with thinking like this, his next book should be The Self-Delusion. Self-Delusion. And Francis Crick, co-discoverer of DNA, biologists must constantly keep in mind that what they see was not designed, but rather evolved. That is just head in the sand thinking. Everybody can do it. Doctors can do it. Humans can do it. I want the freedom from that, where you say, oh boy, it sure looks designed, but I don't believe it's designed. And then finally, freedom from religious conclusions masquerading as science. Here's a good one. Carl Sagan. Cosmos is all that is, ever was, or ever will be. That's how he began his series. That's how he began his book. Kind of sounds a little sciencey, doesn't it? The cosmos is all that is, or ever was, or ever will be. But the problem is, that's not a scientific statement. That's a religious statement. And if Dr. Sagan were still alive, I would go up to him respectfully and say, Dr. Sagan, you said the cosmos is all that is, ever was, or ever will be. What experiment did you do, and what scientific paper did you publish it in, where you demonstrated this? He hasn't done any of that. That's not a scientific statement. Michael Shermer, writing about Richard Dawkins in Scientific American, said, in one of the most existentially penetrating statements ever made by a scientist, Richard Dawkins concluded that the universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. We could argue with him over that, but a better way is to just say, Dr. Dawkins, what experiment did you do, and what paper did you publish it in which you showed that there was no evil, no good? How could he even show that there was no purpose? What experiment would show that? This is a religious statement masquerading as science, but not really science. Stephen Hawking, he says there is no heaven. The world-renowned theoretical physicist finds no room for heaven in his view of the cosmos. The 69-year-old says, quote, there is no heaven or afterlife for broken down computers. That's what he calls your brain when you die, a broken down computer. This is a fairy story for people afraid of the dark. Well, Dr. Hawking, you say there's no afterlife, and specifically there is no heaven. Well, you're a scientist. What paper and what experiment did you do to prove this? I mean, think about it. How would you prove there is no heaven? You have to what? Die. And then you have to look. Hey, no heaven. And then you got to come back and tell us about it. But Dr. Hawking is still alive. How does he know there is no heaven? You know, people listen to him because he's a scientist, but that's a religious statement, masquerading as science. Lawrence Krauss, a universe from nothing. This isn't nature creating itself. The amazing thing is that every atom in your body came from a star that exploded. And the atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than your right hand. It's really the most poetic thing I know about physics. You are all stardust. You couldn't be here if stars hadn't exploded, because the elements, the carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, iron, and all the matter for evolution were created in the nuclear furnaces of stars, and the only way they could get in your bodies if those stars were kind enough to explode. So forget Jesus. The stars died so you could be here today. Religious implications? Of course. Scientific statement? Totally religious, masquerading as science. And then finally, Jeremy Rifkin said this. We no longer feel ourselves to be guests in someone else's home. He's talking about God's home. and therefore obliged to make our behavior conform to a pre-existing set of cosmic rules. He means God's rules. It's our creation now. We make the rules. We establish the parameters of reality. We create the world, and because we do, we no longer feel beholden to outside forces. We no longer have to justify our behavior. We are now the architects of the universe. We are responsible to nothing outside ourselves, for we are the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Yeah, he stole it. And it doesn't just border on blasphemy. It is blasphemy. And I want the freedom from these religious statements simply masquerading as science. That's what I want. And the whole thing about this talk, where we want to focus the discussion, defining those two terms, so that we're less than persuaded, that we've been listening carefully, we're not persuaded because of two unobserved important events, natural origin of life, the ability to change one creature to a fundamentally different kind, because of their failed mechanism of design relying on mutations which tear down information, coupled to some mystical, magical selector, which they can't even point to, in contrast to things showing all the patterns of design with the probability of them happening almost zero, and all or nothing unity. I think that's a much better explanation. And I certainly don't like being bound to magical words like arose, emerged, and gave rise to. And I like the freedom to follow the evidence wherever it leads. And I don't like these religious statements masquerading as science, where someone can tell me the cosmos is all that is, ever was, or ever will be, something they can never prove scientifically. And because of that, we want to take people like Lawrence Krauss, Jeremy Rifkin, or maybe your next door neighbor, and explain that to them very, very quickly. And then hopefully you'll have a couple more minutes to tell them about the one who did create them, the Lord Jesus Christ. Because that's where you want the conversation to go, is over there to explain those things to them. So, hopefully, you can remember this. This is useful. I just went through this on the radio just last week. Had a 10-minute interview, popped this all out, and got it in. And it was a Christian station. The interviewer said, "Wow, I've never heard it so succinct and so precise there, without a lot of ramble and babble." So this might be something that may be of use to you. If you don't, at least we can remember FLUFF on those things. And I learned something from Dr. Hawking. And I this isn't competition or anything, but I noticed that the other day, he walked up with like a monster stack of books, and he gave them away. He can do that because he owns his own ministry, and he's the boss. But I'm not the boss. So I can come up with a stack of books. I can give these away because I don't own my own ministry. But who would like... Oh, that was fast. That was really fast. I was going to say, who would like to buy this book? Anyway. Oh, I will give this out to you, ma'am. Yes, to you. I will give it to you afterwards so I don't have to come down. I have this book. I had it right here. Where is it? This book. And I'm going to give this away on how to explain design to your neighbors, and it has these features, to the gal who has been timing the talks. Yes, you, my nemesis. Yeah, it's you. Thank you so much for being the timer. Your efforts are much appreciated. But this one is to really give away. This one's on how to, here's the picture. It's written by a genius. Anyway, how to explain design to your friends and neighbors. And it just has these 2-page articles evaluating real versus apparent design. I almost forgot what these articles on. The folly of design without purpose. You know, how would any engineer design something without a purpose? And doesn't the purpose constrain my design? I mean, those are things that you want to be able to explain there. Similar features show, you know, do they show universal common ancestry? How do you explain those things? Anybody would like this book? Raise your hand. Yes, ma'am. On the back. Thank you. Thank you so much. The back row. Are you also from Canada?
No, North Dakota.
Oh, okay, cool. You got a native. And you can see this your neighbor there from the north. Thank you so much. And I'll take this over to the young gal. Thank you so very much. I think that was all we had. My wife wants me to have you sign up for our free newsletter if you don't have it. Please sign up for that. Thank you, and turn it back to Pastor.
We're going to take just a little bit of a break.